One of the things we've learned is that you have inside you what might be similar to an automatic pilot in a plane or a boat. And if I had a boat here, and I had the automatic pilot set for north, but there was a wheel back here, and I turn that wheel real hard, and I hold it, and I go east for a while. But if I let go of that wheel, what's going to happen to the boat? That's right, it will go back north again because the automatic pilot was never changed. So we find that a lot of people in life will achieve goals like losing weight, or achieving a certain financial status, or making so many sales calls a day and getting a certain income. But what happens as soon as they stop that real effortful, nose to the grindstone kind of approach, they go back. They gain the weight again. Their relationships don't work anymore. They stop selling as much. And it requires that discipline, discipline, discipline. And what I want to do is share with you a less stressful way to achieve any goal. And it's by using affirmations and visualization. We're going to literally reprogram the automatic pilot. And that's why we use this tool. Let me first just give you the guidelines for an affirmation. An affirmation is a positive statement that describes the goal as if it's already achieved. And there are 8 guidelines. The first guideline says that it starts with the words I am. I am. Always starts with I am. We find that the words I am are the 2 most powerful words in the English language. Whatever you put after the words I am, your unconscious takes as a command. So if you say, I'm sick and tired of that, guess what you're going to start producing in your life? Being sick and tired. If you say, I am the kind of person that nobody likes, then you're going to end up with nobody liking you. So for an affirmation, it's going to be positive, started with I am. The second guideline is that it be positive. You never want to have an affirmation that says, I'm no longer afraid of snakes. Okay? You want to say, I am happily and easily handling snakes. You don't want one that says, I'm no longer afraid of making sales calls. You want to have one that says, I am easily and happily making sales calls. So you state it in the positive tense. Let me show you why that's so important. Close your eyes for just a minute, again, unless you're driving a car. And what I want you to do is when I say these sentences, notice what images come up in your mind. The first sentence is this. The dog is not chasing the cat. Here's the second sentence. I am not thinking about elephants. Okay, open your eyes. Now, how many of you, even for a second, saw a dog chasing a cat, even if it was for a little microsecond? Over half the people in the room. How many of you saw an elephant? Almost everybody. Okay. The purpose of an affirmation is to evoke a picture, because it's the picture that has more power than the words. The picture has more power than the words. Earlier today we did the skyscraper thing where I asked you to imagine walking to the edge of a skyscraper and looking down. Now your mind cognitively knew you were in a safe place, but your body responded as if it were actually on a skyscraper. So the image is more powerful than the thought. So when we make an affirmation, always in the positive tense, or you will bring up the picture of the negative, which you don't want. Third guideline, it must be stated in the present tense. I am happily standing on the balcony of my apartment in Kaanapali Bay, watching the sunset in Maui. See, that says I'm in Maui, present tense right now. Now the problem is, where am I really? Chicago, Illinois. So my mind hears this and it goes, wait a second, you're not in Hawaii, you're in Chicago. That creates what we call structural tension in the brain. And I'll explain why that's important in just a minute. So I don't want to say, someday I'm going to own a condominium in Hawaii, because I'll always be in a process of going to. If I say I'm going to LA and I affirm I'm going to own or I'm going to LA, then what happens, I'm always going to be on some road on my way to Los Angeles and never there. Exactly. The next guideline says brief, short, as few words as possible. Pretend every word in your affirmation costs $10,000. Any word you don't need, get rid of it. And the point again is, when you have a few goals that you're committed to, and when your affirmation's brief, that focuses your energy. If you've got a long affirmation like, I am proudly standing on the terrace of this place on Pacific Coast Highway somewhere in the world doing blah, 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 the mind falls asleep. Okay? But if it's short and punchy, the mind remembers it. Okay, the next guideline, number 5, is specific. We already talked about that in terms of the guy who wanted to have a foreign car dealership in a metropolitan area. So be specific about what you want. What year, what color, what brand, what kind. Is it stick shift or not? In other words, be specific. Number 6 says ing word, an action word that ends in ing. I am driving my car. I am expressing my love. I am acting calmly. See, if it's an active verb, then it propels you with more energy. Number 7 is it needs to include a feeling word. I am happily driving my car. I am proudly showing off my new home. I am peacefully interacting with my children. Now, why do we want a feeling word in there? The reason you do anything is because how you think it's going to make you feel when you've done it. The reason I want to own a pool table is not because there's something intrinsic about pool, but because I know I enjoy myself when I'm playing it. The reason I want my children to grow up healthy and happy is I have a feeling I'll feel a certain way rather than if they grow up and they're into drugs and they get into trouble. So any goal is because I think it's going to make me feel a certain way. In order to be motivated, I need to have that feeling in the affirmation because it's the feeling I want. That's what provides the fuel. It's the desire level of the affirmation. Number 8, and the last one, says it must be personal. And what we mean by that is do not try to change other people's behavior with your affirmation. Don't say, I'm happily married to Robert Redford, because it would require Robert Redford to change his life. But you could say, I'm happily married to a blonde, blue-eyed guy who lives in Colorado and raises horses, because there's probably a bunch of those guys around, and you could find one of them. What I like to do with those kind of affirmations is at the end add the words, or something better. Because you may think you like blondes, but you may meet a brunette who really turns you on. Okay? If you're in business, you don't state it so that someone else has to change. I mean, obviously any goal is going to require other people to participate. Don't have an affirmation that says, I'm happily watching my son clean up his room. You can have an affirmation that says, I'm happily looking at my son's room clean, but how you get there may be that you may clean it, you may hire somebody, you may do it together. So do the outcome that you want. Now, what do you do with these affirmations once you have one? Okay, so you've got a goal, you now state it as an affirmation, and what you're going to do is for each goal and each affirmation, what I recommend is write it down on a 3x5 card, a separate 3x5 card. And then in the morning, when you first get up, look through your cards one at a time, read the affirmation, close your eyes, and visualize yourself as having already achieved the goal that the affirmation represents. People often ask, how many goals or how many affirmations should I have? I say usually between 8 and 15 are plenty. Have them to balance out your life, emotional, financial, physical, relational, etc. But if you get too many more than that, you're likely to spread yourself too thin. Then the question comes, how long should I do this? And the answer is until the goal shows up. Okay? When you've got the goal, create some new goals. The way it works is when you close your eyes and you're visualizing the goal as if it's already achieved, there are 3 things that are really useful. One is see it in moving color like a movie. Secondly, hear the sounds you would hear if you were there, especially people congratulating you for having achieved your goal. And thirdly, feel the feelings in your body right now that you would feel as if you had already achieved it. And one of the neat things that happen is every day you're closing your eyes and you're creating that feeling you'd already feel. It's almost as if even if you never get to the goal, it doesn't matter because you feel it inside already. So you can create the feeling of success inside of you. And what we find is when you become the kind of person you want to become, but just act as if, do it now, hold the feeling, that you start attracting to you the kind of people that will support you in terms of being where you want to be. So auditory, visual, and feeling. So I know these work. They've worked in my life, and they've worked in the lives of people that I've shared them with. See, visualization is working in your life right now. Remember earlier we talked about fear, and fear being a result of seeing things in the future that are scary, like being late for the doctor's appointment? Well, fear, the way we spell it, F-E-A-R, is fantasized experiences appearing real. And your mind, as I said, can't tell the difference. So if it sees a real event as a negative event, what you're really doing is negative goal setting. You'll start to produce that in your life. Or you can use that same power to produce the positive, and it'll produce that. I remember it was Mark Twain, he said, "I've lived a long life and had many troubles, most of which never happened." Okay, because we think about them. So we want to take that same power and use it to our advantage. A lot of times when people first learn about affirmations, they think that if they say something like, "I'm thin," and the fact is they're really fat, or if they say, "I'm looking at the scale and reading 122 pounds when they're weighing 145, they're lying. And in a sense they are. They are lying. But it's a lie that's done with the intention of producing a positive result. See, because when I say one thing, and it's not what the current reality is, that creates a positive tension in my brain. The brain goes, "Wait a second, that's not right." And so that positive, that structural tension that gets created in the brain begins to move me. Now there's two directions I can move. I can move towards saying, "Well, wait a second, I'm really 145. Whew, now I feel better again." Or I could say, "No, I'm going to keep holding this belief that I'm 120 pounds. I'm going to keep saying that. I'm going to keep affirming that." And if I do that enough, that structural tension builds up enough, then it starts to say, well, he's really serious about this 120-pound thing, or, she's really serious about it. And so we're going to have to do whatever it takes to produce that result. And so that tension builds up in the brain. We call it motivation sets in, and then I start to do the things that 120-pound people do. I eat more vegetables and rice and less fattening foods and less desserts and less sugar and so forth. And I start exercising more, and I start watching my calorie count. And pretty soon, I end up at 120 pounds. So that it is a lie, but it's a lie done with the intention of producing a positive result for yourself. The same principle applies to anything about yourself that you believe. Let's say you believe you're not lovable. Let's say you believe no one will ever like you. Let's say you believe you're stupid, which is a big one that a lot of people have. And then you're going, "Well, I'm smart." Or you might have an affirmation, "I am enjoying people enjoying me." And so what happens is some party goes, "Yeah, right. Yeah, sure." In fact, I say to people, if you're really working with affirmations at a deep level, and they don't make you real uncomfortable every time you say them, you're probably not working with the right affirmation. An affirmation that's right on is really going to, at first, make you feel uncomfortable. You might feel shaky. Sometimes people feel dizzy. Their palms start to sweat, because you're basically challenging your whole core belief about who you are.